Hello everyone, welcome to DotNetMirror channel. If you are building modern high performance web application, you already know how crucial APIs are. But a common challenge many developers face, especially when getting started with ASP.NET Core Web API, how data actually travels from an HTTP request into our C# code. Especially we are going to master three essential attributes that you will use in almost every single API endpoint you write. From route, from query and from body. By end of this video, you will know exactly when to use each one, how they differ, how to combine them for real world scenarios. Let's get started. If you are new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to stay updated with our latest Azure and .NET videos. Now let's talk about the magic that happens inside the controller parameter binding. When a request hits your application, it's just raw HTTP text. Parameter binding is the automated process that converts the raw incoming request data into strongly typed C# objects or variables that your action methods can use. ASP.NET Core is incredibly flexible and supports a wide variety of binding sources. It can pull data from route values, the query string, HTTP headers, the request body, or even multi-part form values. It can even inject services straight via dependency injection. Today we are focusing heavily on the big three: route, query, and the body. Let's start with from route. We use this attribute when the data is structural, mandatory part of the URL path itself. This most commonly used for specific resource identifiers like database IDs or unique URLs. Take a look at the code example on the slide. Our URL pattern is defined as API slash product slash ID inside the HTTP attribute. By adding from route right next to our integer parameter ID, we are explicitly telling the runtime look directly into the URL path, find the value where ID is, and map it directly to this variable. If a client calls API slash product slash 5, the framework automatically assigns the value 5 to our ID parameter. Next one is from query. Query strings are used for optional parameters. Think of features like filtering data, sorting lists, or handling pagination. In an HTTP request, query parameter sits safely behind the question mark character at the very end of the URL, separated by ampersand. In this example, we have a get endpoint for fetching the products. Notice the parameter string category and int page. If client sends a request to API slash products with the question mark, category equal to electronics and page equal to 1, ASP.NET Core automatically parses those keys and binds them. One tip here: for basic primitive types like strings and integers, ASP.NET Core will actually infer from query by default if the parameter name is not found in the route template. However, explicitly writing the attributes makes your code much cleaner and easy to read. Let's understand from body. When you need to send a large, complex, or deeply nested objects to the server, like when creating a new product, that's where from body comes into the play. The attribute tells the application to read the data. This attribute tells the application to read the data streamed inside the actual HTTP request body, which is typically formatted as JSON payload. Look at our HTTP post example. We are expecting a complex type called product DTO. When a client sends a post request with a JSON object containing a name and a price, the built-in system reads the stream, deserializes the JSON, and instantiate our C# object automatically. An important technical constraint to keep in mind: only one parameter per action method can be decorated with from body. This is because the request body is an inbound text stream that can only be read once by the formatter. Let's look at the comparison sheet of these three. From route reads directly from the URL path. It will be useful for required identifiers like unique IDs. When it comes to from query, reads from the query string behind the question mark. You can use during optional filters, search criteria, and paging parameters. With from body, it reads directly from the raw HTTP request body. You can use during complex structures, payloads, and DTOs usually written in JSON. In real world enterprise applications, you rarely just use one source at a time. A highly common pattern is mixing these sources. Consider resource update scenario using an HTTP put or HTTP patch request. Look at this example. We have a put endpoint here, which is API slash product slash ID. To update a product restfully, we need to know which product it is. what we are modifying, and we need the new data to apply. Here we combine them gracefully. We grab the unique identifier ID using FromRoute, and we grab the updated payload object data using FromBody. This keeps our API clean, predictable, and highly REST compliant. I will show you in the demo. All right, enough talking and looking at slides. Let's open Visual Studio, build a real world certification API from scratch, and see exactly how these parameter bindings behave live in our endpoints. Let's jump into the code. In the Visual Studio, I have created a Web API parameter binding demo application, which is ASP.NET Core Web API control based endpoints. I have created a certification controller which contains all our endpoints. If you look at this particular code, we are trying to mock the data. We are trying to create a certification model which contains ID, name, category, and the fee of the exam, and also available slots to take the exam. And here we have different endpoints to show the binding sources. Our first endpoint is get certificates. It returns all certificates if you don't pass anything. If you pass the category and the fee, it will try to return the filtered version. The next endpoint is get specific certificate by the ID. Third one is posting a certificate, and the last one is to update certificate available slots. Here we are trying to use mixed binding sources in this endpoint. In this particular certification class, I have created in the models, so you can go and see here. Certification contains ID, name, category, fee, and available slots. In the last endpoint, we are trying to update the exam available slots. Instead of putting our model as an input, we are trying to create a DTO so that you don't expose model to your API endpoints. For that, we have created a DTO called update slots quantity. Using this DTO, we are trying to update the model available slots quantity. And other than this, in the program.cs, I have enabled map scalar API reference so that we can work with our API endpoints from the scalar UI like Swagger. So now let's run the application. Now the application is running at 7204. Let's go to the browser. So to access your endpoints via scalar, just say scalar slash the v1 version. Similar to the Swagger, this is one of the UI. You can go and work with your endpoints. So first let's pick up our first endpoint. This is our first endpoint which is using FromQuery as binding source. And if you look at the URL, it is API slash search. Here FromQuery is nothing but after the question mark, you have to pass values like this. Now let's hit this endpoint. And if you look at the code, these are optional parameters. Now let's not pass anything. Let's send the request. We got the data, and you can see all our certifications are available here. Now we will try to pass this time category as fundamentals, and let's pass the minimum fee criteria as 100. Now it has written two certifications. One is fee greater than 100. If you look at the code, it is trying to filter our data and even with the fee value. In this way, you can use from query as an optional parameters. You can retrieve all your data or filtered version of your data. This is from query binding source. Now let's understand the second one, which is get certificate by ID. Here instead of from query, we are using route. Let's test this. And if you see here within the URL, we have a ID as route. Now let's send ID value as 3. If you look at here, we got the certificate with the ID as 3 over here. Now let's move to the next one, which is from body. From body will be used for your post endpoints. So this is your post. So in the post, it is expecting certification model data as input from the body, and this is the request body. Now we need to put the ID. Let me get sample values. Now let's run this. If you look at here, we got an error because the validation is failed, and the reason is id it is expecting as an integer, but explicitly we sent as string. Now let's go and modify this. Let's send this. Now it is 201 created, and this is created. To test this, let's go to our get call. I'll remove the filters, and if you look at the data, we got newly created certification over here. So in this, we are trying to use the from body as binding source. If you go to the fourth one, what we are trying to do is in this particular patch endpoint for a particular certification, we are going and updating the available slots. So here, if you see here, we are passing certification ID as from route, whereas to update the quantity, we are passing as from body. So let's test this endpoint. So let's go here. I will pass as 5, and the new quantity I will pass as 50. So previously we created with quantity as 10. Now let's send this. Now it says 5. The new quantity is 10 plus 50, which is 60. Now if you go to API cert and invoke again, and you can see the ID is 60. Like this, you can write your own endpoints, and based on your need, you can go and use specific binding sources in your code. This particular code I have pushed to the repo. I will provide the link in the description. You can use it. Let's go back to the PPT. As we are done with the demo, let's look at other important factors. The another one is collection binding. What if you want to pass an array or list of items via URL? For example, filtering a product catalog by multiple tags or colors simultaneously. If you look at the URL example on this slide, notice how we pass multiple values like tags equal to red, blue, and green. By defining our action parameter as a list of string and degrading with from query, the framework automatically detects the repeating keys in the query string and bundles them cleanly into a strongly typed C# list for you. Now let's talk about security and data integrity model validation. When you accept input from a client, you should never trust it blindly. When using from body, the model binding engine automatically trigger data annotation validation rules. For example, look at the product DTO clause. We have marked the name property as required and placed a range restriction on the price. If client sends an empty string or a negative price, the engine catches it, sets the model state is valid to false, and allows us to return a clean 400 bad request. And even in our code, let me show you. So in the DTO, I put new quantity range as 0 to 1000. So what we can do is let's go to the slot. What we will try to do is this time ID is 5. The new quantity value, let's say that 1001. And if you send this, we got request as 400 bad request. It says slot quantity must be between 0 to 1000. In this way, you can go and write data annotations to invoke validations on top of your DTOs or models. Let's quickly look at some common mistakes. While ASP.NET Core generally considers case insensitive during the binding, it's always a great habit to double check that your URL names match with your parameter names. Missing from body, if you forget this attribute on a complex object, if you don't put from body, the object will come as a null. Make sure that you are defining from body. Ensure your client sending a header content type like application.json. If they send as a plain text, the API formatter will reject it. Route conflicts. Ensure your URL route templates are explicit so the engine doesn't get confused between multiple endpoints matching the same pattern. Some of the best practices: always use route attributes for structural identity, use query strings for filtering, searching, and sorting the data, use body attribute for creating or completely modifying resources, and as a golden rule, always use DTOs, data transfer objects, instead of exposing your raw database entity models directly inside a FromBody parameter. This keeps your architecture secure and cleanly decoupled. And with this, we are done with the demo. I hope this clear breakdown and practical demo help you confidently choose the right binding source for your next API endpoint. If you found this video helpful, please hit like button. Make sure you click subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upcoming videos in .NET or Azure. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.